Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Amplify Your Business. On today's show, we're going to be talking to Barry Ehlert over at Windmill Golf. So he's the CEO of Windmill Golf, which has 5 courses, and we're recording this in the springtime. And I just don't know how we were able to capture him with a few free couple minutes here, but we managed to do so. So welcome to the show, Barry.
Lance, I appreciate it. Definitely a busy time, like you mentioned, but wouldn't miss this for anything. So thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much. Now, one of the things that we want to talk about once we get rolling is this new venture called Launchpad Golf, which you guys are in the midst of developing out right now. So that's really exciting. But before we get into that, I'd love to hear just a little bit of a backstory about how you ended up with 5 golf courses.
Well, it is quite a backstory. My passion for golf came through my father, who had been in the industry and is a landscape architect by trade. And his passion came from his father, which, he ran a small golf course in southern Alberta in the 1950s.
Oh, wow.
So it's kind of 3-generation, family affair. And at one point in time, I had, many siblings and it was more family related. But over time, it's, evolved, and, I've kind of gone a little bit of a different direction and made some acquisitions and been, fortunate with timing and very blessed in my life to do what I love. And, that's what I, really love about the golf business is that I can do something I'm so passionate about.
Now, we're recording this in the spring of 2021, and so we're still in the midst of a pandemic. I'm curious, at the beginning of the pandemic, everything kind of got shut down, but golf was one of the things that was managed to stay open I think you guys were shut down for a little bit of time, right?
We were.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And so how long was it between the COVID shutdown beginning to when you guys were able to reopen then?
It would have been a few weeks. We were kind of first and second week of May for most golf courses to get open, which is a little bit late. I mean, all of the golf courses are open this time of the year and been open for, a week or two, some of my courses. So, certainly had an impact. I think the most amazing story that came out of the pandemic from a golf industry perspective is how the owners, the operators, all the different associations, the professional associations all came together as one voice to communicate our position to the government of Alberta. And fortunately, they listened and we were able to have a great season. And to my knowledge, you may have heard Ontario shut down their golf courses recently. I think is a mistake. And I actually just read a letter from the president and CEO of Golf North. They have many golf courses in the east side of the country, in Ontario and Quebec, I believe. And of 20 million golf rounds in Ontario last summer, there was not one transmissible case of COVID-19. So we think it's a great place for people to be during a pandemic, but certainly there's a lot of protocols and health and safety things that we need to take into account for sure.
Yeah, so I know like there was a lot of changes there with regard to the golf carts and the way that people were supposed to be navigating through the course and obviously the check-in process and so on. So did you guys have to implement new technology in order to expedite the flow of people through and making sure the protocols are being followed and whatnot, or did you pretty much have everything in place already anyway?
Really good question. I'm not so sure we had to maximize or install new technology. Maybe we just maximized the use of the technology we had. Yeah. But certainly, getting people to pay in advance and some of our, check-in procedures and, the least point of contacts possible, which was the most important thing we could do. We've continued some of those practices for sure. We've amplified some other ones. The sanitization of, golf carts and anything that can be touched is absolutely paramount to us. And it's something that we talk about every day.
Yeah, and there's a lot of businesses that have that service component where they're interacting directly with the public, and I've definitely noticed a lot of businesses adopting new technologies. But like you said, there's quite a bit of just fully utilizing what they had in place, and I'm really curious because it forced a lot of people to kind of take that step forward in terms of leveraging technology or leveraging the tools that they had. Where do you think that you guys will be going back to the old way of things, or is it creating efficiencies now in your business that you're going to really, benefit from going forward?
Really good question. I mean, I think there's definitely been a lot of things that have been learned through this COVID experience. There's definitely, some areas that we've noticed we can improve that we'll implement moving forward. And then I think there's probably some areas that we would like to go back to, how it used to be, having rakes and bunkers and, things of that nature from an aesthetic standpoint, just really, enhances the overall experience. Being able to take your ball and pull it out of the cup, even take a pin out if you would like to. So there's things like that. But overall, golf is golf. It's a game of tradition. It's been the same for hundreds of years. And we feel like, the traditional components of golf are still intact. So we feel very fortunate and blessed.
So with the new protocols and everything in place, did you end up losing rounds just because things were a little bit slower in terms of having people go through the club and through the course, or has things actually sped up? Like, I was just curious in terms of the impact on the throughput of the people.
Well, I think we both lost rounds and gained rounds. And the reason I mentioned that is because we had a later start than we would have normally had.
Yep.
But with golf being one of those activities that was very COVID friendly, a lot of people came back to golf. Like the amount of people that I met that said, I just got busy in my life and gave up golf 10 years ago. I mean, 2020 was a record year with club sales. And end of 2020 for pre-ordered sales of equipment, apparel, it already broke the sales record of last year. So, I think people are coming back to the game. We're seeing new people that are interested in the game. My personal opinion is that, COVID-19 has had both a conscious and a subconscious impact on how people think, how they recreate. And I think golf is one of those activities that people will gravitate to, not only now, but into the future.
Yeah, it's really interesting, right? Because a lot of recreation-oriented sports, especially localized ones, just really saw a huge increase in use and like you said, people coming back. Because correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that statistically speaking, the last decade we've been seeing a bit of a decline in the total number of people golfing, right? So the trend was on a downward trend, and now we should see lift back up, eh?
Yeah. And, depending on, if you're talking, globally or North America or Canadian, it's certainly without question been on a decline, anywhere between, depending on, again, where you're looking at 10 to 20% decline in the amount of golfers, which is significant, right? I mean, how many industries can absorb, a 20% decrease in the amount of golfers, which is why you've seen golf courses shut down globally, especially across North America and Canada. But certainly, we've seen an increase. Last year was a big boost. Even without being able to host our weddings, our corporate events, having as much food and beverage as we typically would, rounds made up for a lot of that, missed opportunities. So we think it's going to continue into the future. I'm really bullish on golf from a personal standpoint because I think people's habits are going to have shifted. We were feeling it, I think, in the industry a little bit where people were coming back to the game, but certainly COVID has created a significant boost. There's no question.
Now, one of the things that I did want to pivot and chat about was Launchpad Golf. So this new venture that you're launching in Alberta, which is just, when I saw the photos and the walkthrough, and maybe I'll get our designers to throw something in right now while I'm talking about it a little bit so our viewers can see it. But it was just it's a beautiful, beautiful concept, and one that I think has an ability to really bring people back to the clubhouse and out to the golf course and infect a lot more people with that passion for the game, but also those who want to be a lot more casual about it too. So tell me a little bit about Launchpad, explain it in your own words, and then why you thought this was a great opportunity to bring it to Alberta.
Yeah. So, I think Launchpad, is a form of golf. I explain it to people as a combination between golf and bowling, but it has a lot more technology involved in it than traditional golf or traditional bowling. But the unique thing about this concept is it's not intimidating. A lot of people feel like when they go golfing, standing on the tee box, it's very intimidating. You feel like you're in a fishbowl in some instances, and it's tough, right? It's tough. It's a tough sport to get good at. As easy as we try to make it to get on golf courses and have our pros available to teach people, it can be a tough, difficult sport at times. So Launchpad is more about a social entertainment experience where you're utilizing a golf club, you're hitting to targets, there's fun, engaging, interactive games. It'll have a dining experience. Most of the experience will actually be outside. The vast majority of your time will be spent outside in a covered patio setting that will actually have open year round, which was another point I wanted to make. I think one of the difficult things about being in Canada is that, we're open for 5 or 6 months and then we're closed for 5 or 6 months. And so people, get excited and ramped up for golf. And then, it's a little bit of a downer when these net, but without question, Launchpad, is going to be open year round. We've developed technology that allows us to, be flexible with, our heating so that even when it's minus 20, we can create a comfortable and engaging and warm environment. So something I'm really passionate about, I'm excited about. I think it's going to grow the game of golf a lot. And hopefully we can get a lot of those people out to our golf courses eventually too.
Yeah. So is the concept then to install this, basically as an attachment to existing clubhouses, or is this a whole new building, a whole new facility that you're going to put up at existing golf courses?
Yeah, good question. It'll be a brand new building. It won't be an attachment to any clubhouses at all. A lot of times it'll be a standalone location, maybe not even associated with the golf course. My first 2 proposed locations, one at Mickelson National, which is, under construction now. It's associated with the golf course. And then my second one is as well. But who knows what the future holds? I envision, big things for this concept. And, my hope is that we can, be in many locations that aren't affiliated with the golf course in some instances. And then other instances, I think there's a huge amount of synergies of having it associated with the golf course. So really, we're not limited to specific locations. Really what's important to us is the synergistic relationships, how easy it is to get to the location so that lots of people are able to come and experience what Launchpad Golf is all about.
Now, golf itself has gone through, a lot of innovation in terms of the clubs and the golf balls and the technology around the playing of it. But I haven't seen anything anyway from a peripheral view of to this level of a change of the concept basically of the driving range. I mean, they like you said, when I saw it, I totally thought immediately it's a mashup of the bowling socialization that's there with the golf instead of swinging clubs instead of throwing the balls, right? And so and the kind of the bar kind of like atmosphere, it reminded me a lot of Rec Room, right? The theaters, how they've deployed a couple of Rec Rooms in the Edmonton area anyway, and I imagine there's some down in Calgary too, and that's a Cineplex theater, venture or a spin-off from theirs. Now, it's very similar in that sense, where it's really about entertainment, and it's going to be an entertainment destination where you could go and do that for a little bit and then head out to the club after, or whatever the scenario is going to be. So thinking of that innovation in terms of innovating the game that way, how do you come across those kinds of things? And I guess, what is the approach that you take to when you're thinking about innovating your product offering, your service offering, and so on?
Right. So a couple of things. There are some businesses in the United States and beyond that would be similar in some regards, or at least I would say on the surface they would appear similar. I think what we're going to deliver at Launchpad Golf is far more experience, far more interaction, far more of a unique customer journey than some of those offerings, and a significant focus on technology. Technology will be everywhere. It's mind-boggling to think that you can have 40 or 60 people all hitting simultaneously, and that technology tracking those individual balls and telling you how far the ball's going, how close it is to one of the targets, if it's, hooking, if it's drawing, if it's fading, if it's slicing, whatever it's doing, and then computing all that with technology. So, we think it's an interactive, engaging experience that we're excited about. It's interesting you mentioned Rec Room, because my senior vice president actually was the person behind, or one of the individuals that worked a lot on Rec Room for 31 years. So I've hired him to, run this business and work with me hand in hand at Launchpad Golf, because, he has these incredible experiences and he's been exposed to some great opportunities. So something that we think is great in so many regards, and blends that entertainment and golf componentry to really expand who this appeals to.
Really interesting. And so from your perspective then on the innovation side, it's a lot of looking at what is happening in other markets and trying to pull some of those ideas into a new business idea, then, is what you were doing by the sounds of things.
Yeah, I mean, the core technology existed. I had negotiated with the supplier of that technology on, some, rights that we have, so that we would be able to execute on our plan. But beyond that, it's all the touch points and experiences and the things that we're pushing the envelope on. And I can just give you an example. We're looking at a different, unique technology where robots through a track system on our ceiling would deliver food and beverage to each individual hitting bay. Not that somebody would have to have their food and beverage delivered that way, but they might have that option. And so there's things like that we think would be engaging, unique, different experiences, very customizable, in the moment, that we think is super important. And the reason I personally think that's important, I mean, I know, Lance, you're in the marketing business and something that I love as well. But the reason I think it's so important in this is, we are a generation that's expecting immediate gratification more than ever before. We want to be immediately rewarded for something. 10, 15, 20 years ago, or even when I was a kid, I mean, go outside and play for 4 or 5 hours, and you didn't have to have these immediate gratifications. It was just over the course of, an hour or two, we had a great time. But, with these technology pieces at our fingertips, I think people are more accustomed, myself included, to an immediate feedback response or form of gratification. So that's what we're hoping to do. I think we're going to be able to accomplish that in many, many opportunities throughout this experience when people come and visit Launchpad Golf.
Yeah, no, it's really exciting. I can't wait to be able to visit it. So when is opening day approximately? Do you guys have a date set for that yet?
So the way that this business has evolved is I was going to build a test location initially, and that one's under construction, and that will probably be mid late summer, and then beyond that, our second location probably 10 months from now, or maybe 12 months. But what happened is I wanted to get this test location open and prove out my theory. But the more I got into this, the more convinced I was that this was really going to be a business that I was engaged with, really passionate about, something that there's a lot of parallels with the existing golf business. So I just forged ahead with our second location as well. So, crossing fingers, I think we're on the right track, but lots of work ahead of us still.
Yeah, well, exciting. And I don't know if anything can be announced yet, but man, like Edmonton, when are you going to get one up here in Edmonton then?
Well, I can tell you we're working every day with lots of moving parts, and had lots of requests from people in Edmonton. So we know it's a market we want to be at some point in time.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. And so I'm just really curious about if there's any lessons learned as you're, adding on this new service, this new venture into your repertoire, into your portfolio of golf courses. It's related, but like you said, a very separate business. So as you're going in a slightly different direction, adding in another venture into your portfolio, any lessons that you've learned along the way, challenges that you've encountered that some of our audience might be able to benefit as they are thinking of different ways of expanding their businesses as well?
Well, I'm a big proponent of a few things. And number one is I think we learn a lot more from our mistakes than our successes.
Yeah.
I'm making mistakes and having failures every day. Fortunately, I've got the most incredible team that I surround myself with that, pick up my mistakes and failures and, are able to adapt and make us better. But certainly, a goal and focus for me is to try not to make those mistakes and failures more than once. And that's difficult sometimes. You think that it's not. I almost alluded to my kids where I talk to them and go, why did you do that? And then 3 days later, it's like, why did you do that again? And I catch myself doing the same things in the real life and business world. So certainly we can learn a lot from those, mistakes and failures. Fortunately for myself, I like I mentioned, I've got an incredible team around me. I think one of the benefits of moving towards this business, Launchpad Golf, is I have a pretty solid core nucleus of great people that are innovative, that are smart, that are technology savvy, that have great marketing experience, operation experience. And so expanding into this business in Calgary has been relatively easy from the standpoint of having that core nucleus of team that I can rely on. I think if we do expand beyond Calgary, that's when it's going to get a little bit more difficult, but we'll be ready for it without question, and definitely excited.
Yeah. And so any of those, I guess, failures or challenges that along the way that you'd like to share or willing to share then as you learn those lessons so that some of our people can maybe avoid repeating them?
For sure. I mean, the first failure that I had is I've gone through 11 different iterations of a plan to get it right. So something I've been working on for 3.5 years. Right. And, it's gone from something super, super big and the size would have been, morphed to anything else that people had seen to something very, very small. And now we've kind of landed somewhere in between, but, that's taken a lot of time, resources, effort, money to get 11 different iterations of this plan and, pretty significant moves and tweaks along those periods of time. So, I've learned a lot in that. And what I think is going to be the most unique and most interesting is, although I'm happy with the plan we have now, I think after we build one of these, one more of our flagship location, we'll probably have 10 or 12 more iterations of changes and, major moves that we're going to make. So, I think the successes are more so the failures or things that are happening every day in our lives. That's one example that at the very front end of this business, before we even made an announcement, I was making failures all the time because, it just takes time to figure out, what's the most efficient way to build this? How do we get, how do we operate it? Where do we put a kitchen? How big do we want to make it? And all along that process, every time you do one of these 11 plans, you think you got it right. But we failed 11 times, and I think we're probably going to fail at least 11 more in the future. So,
it's like to simplify that right down to something a lot of people can relate to. It's like building a house. I mean, if you've ever gone through the process of building your own house, not by your hands, but having a builder build it, you wouldn't likely, after you've lived in it for a little while, you wouldn't likely rebuild the exact same house. There's going to be things that you're going to change and that. And so, it's a constantly evolving based off of your experience, based off of the interactions. And it's hard to really know how things are going to be until it's actually built. And so something of the scale that you're building, there's a lot more questions, a lot more things that have to be considered. Just out of curiosity, when you said that you've gone through 11 kind of iterations on the planning stage, and obviously it would have been great to have been able to just bang out one plan and be done. That's probably unlikely, but was there anything that you learned along the way that that the next time around, or advice to somebody else who's just starting the planning process? What kind of things should they be considering to shorten that window as much as they possibly can, so there's fewer iterations or whatnot?
Really good question. I think, I'm a self-starter and I like to move and I never sit idle. And probably looking back, I would have been better to, do more research, do more planning on the front end, sit back, maybe take a step back before I take 2 steps forward, where I'm the type of individual where I just want to start running right now. And, definitely, look at your planning, look at the team you surround yourself with and make sure they're right for not only the project, but the right team for yourself. I probably would have gone through 20 iterations if I didn't have the right team, the right architects, the right designers, the right people around me, just because of how I am and how I want to tweak and tinker and do all those, sorts of things. So I think the planning, the implementation on the front end, and really taking a bird's eye view from that perspective is really critical.
Yeah. And I'd also say to our viewers too, what is extremely critical is that you did all these iterations on paper. So sure, you're at 11th right now, but it would have been, much more costly and potentially detrimental to the overall business had you, just steamrolled forward and built iteration number 5 or whatever. Right. So it's definitely making sure you have it all nailed down and well thought out. And that process is going to take iterations before you actually go into the build stage, because at that point you're talking significant dollars for changes and whatnot. So
yeah. Without, Launchpad Golf is new. If we were to talk about the golf business, I could tell you about failures all day long because they're front of mind. And I could give lots of examples of things that we're working on in areas that I failed in that business. But this is a relatively new business. We're learning along as we go. We do have a great team that is our, at our core, and we're excited to, have them learn along with myself and look at this business and what the future holds for us.
So one thing that I am curious about, because I think a lot of industries are ripe for disruption with technology, and so this is a huge technology play in the golf space, and so you're dealing with it's established technology. It sounds like it's being used,
right.
It's in place, but there probably is still quite an evolution and a rapid evolution of that technology. So what you're going to be putting into this year's model is going to be very different than what you're going to be putting into, the one in 12 months or the one in 24 months or whatever, likely. And so I would just love to hear your comments or your thoughts on the rapid evolution of technology, and how, as a business person who, is dealing with these changes, how do you know when to jump in, when the technology is right? And how do you, I guess, mitigate the risk of it rapidly becoming out of date as well?
Right. Really, really good question. And I'm going to talk about both golf and Launchpad Golf in that regard.
Sure.
I think Launchpad Golf is, ripe for advancements in technology, and there's so many different things that we're going to try. I want to be a business that we continually evolve, we continually push the envelope, we continually look for the latest and greatest opportunities. And we're even building this facility with that in mind so that we can expand into the future. On the flip side, golf is a game of tradition. And I think one of the best and worst things about golf is that it is a game of tradition. There's some incredible traditional components about golf that should never change and will always be that way. But as it relates to some of the technology and improvements outside of equipment and things of that nature, how do you advance some of the things with golf? And people have tried a lot of different things, from foot golf to having bigger cups on the greens to so on and so forth. But it's certainly one of the challenges that golf presents itself, is that how do we evolve the game of golf in different ways? And I think there's some ways to do that with design tweaks and changes. And I personally have some ideas from a technology standpoint, but not nearly to the level that I think Launchpad Golf can evolve and change based on technology.
Yeah, it's really interesting just how technology is going to really disrupt a lot of different industries, and so
right.
The fact that you guys are just really jumping on board with technology and building out Launchpad is just a testament to the forward thinking that you're doing over there, and just having your ears and your eyes open to what is happening in other areas of the world, right? There's so many really neat things that we can learn from other people. And so, that's one of the key takeaways that I want our audience to know too, or to walk away with, is just looking at what the competition's doing, not necessarily down the street, but on the other side of the world as well. And with our ability to be globally connected, we can see that, right? We can reach into different parts of the world without actually having to be physically there, and learn what's happening and watch those innovations and see if they take hold, and then take your own spin on it. We don't have to necessarily copy everything. We can evolve it and turn it into something better ourselves as well.
Absolutely. I totally agree with what you're saying. I think especially as this younger generation is getting younger and younger, they're used to technology and advancements and, having things, like I said, at their fingertips. So I think businesses that are willing to adapt and evolve are probably going to see the benefits of that, and long-term should be beneficial to their businesses for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So any last words of advice from a sage business person like yourself, who's running multiple businesses and launching a new one, pardon the pun, on Launchpad, I guess.
Yeah. Really appreciate it, Lance. I still am, young in my career, or at least I think I'm young. I think I haven't even nearly hit the halfway mark. So I feel fortunate and blessed in that regard. I get asked that question a lot, and I really tell people, do something you're passionate about. If you're truly passionate, I don't care what it is, I think you can be successful. And it really doesn't matter what that is. But if you're truly passionate and you truly love what you're doing, you're really not working. And so that's what I've been fortunate enough to be able to do, despite the fact that, my wife thinks that I work 15 or more hours a day. Doesn't feel like it to me, right? So yeah. I highly recommend to people is, and that's tough to do, but whatever you're passionate about, try to grab hold of it. And I think people can be successful in that regard.
Yeah. And just to add to that, and this is one of the things I actually have a conversation with my 50-year-old son about it, because I'm talking at this stage now in his life around, okay, well, what are you going to do? Like, are you going to go off to university after high school's done? Are you going to be, what kind of job or what kind of career, what appeals to you, and so on. And that's the exact same thing that I've been trying to tell him. And then I add to that regardless of what it is that interest, where that interest lies, there is an opportunity for a business within that. So, I'm a lifelong entrepreneur and from a long stream of entrepreneurs in my family. And so I'm always trying to nudge him in that direction, I suppose, a little bit as well. But using his interests. And so it's absolutely amazing. There's the craziest kinds of businesses come out of all these different types of interests. And so, I, like a lot of teenage boys, he's into gaming and whatnot. And you look at that industry alone, which is, multi-billion dollars now, has just really taken off in terms of actually a sport now. And so, who would have thought that when I was playing the old Atari, back in the day, or the Nintendo 64, there wasn't any industry around it. I mean, there was no opportunities there, but obviously some people took a different look at that and went, you know what? There's an opportunity here, and it's continually evolving into something that's this massive, massive industry now. So that would be the other piece of advice that I would add to it, is just don't feel that your passion, even though right now it's hard to find a business model around it, that there isn't a business model, because it seems to me that there's a business model for anything now.
Absolutely. Totally agree with you.
Yeah. Now, just before we leave, I'd love to hear, or love for you to share a little bit about your YouTube channel. So at the beginning of COVID, you started streaming videos into YouTube as a bit of a vlog, I suppose. Tell us a little bit about that and why you started it.
Well, a couple of different things. I mean, I do a lot of different platforms of social media. YouTube is, a focus and something that, we want to grow. And so right as COVID hit is when I hired my videographer. And the reason I did this is I felt like my business had grown to a point where I wasn't able to see a lot of my team as frequently as I want. I certainly wasn't able to connect with our membership the way I wanted to, or even our customers to an extent as well. And I just didn't feel like I was as visible and as present. And so, it originally grew out of an opportunity to, explore and evolve in the golf business and be more present to our different customers. But it's evolved from that. And, anybody that's been on camera a lot, can speak to how difficult it is. I'm just about ready to actually film the beginning part of a bloopers video for what our first year looks like, because it's very difficult, and the amount of time, effort, and energy we've spent, producing these videos, it's time consuming, but it's turned into something much greater than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a bit of a chore. Now I've grown a huge passion for it. I love it. I book off time for it. I'm really excited about this year because we have some, various series that we're extremely excited to film. Fortunately, last year we did have a video that kind of showed Calgary during the early part of the pandemic that went fairly viral, at least in Calgary. I think we're over 300,000 views on that video now.
Excellent.
Just continue to kind of evolve and change. And I think that first year was, kind of putting my toe in the water and figuring things out. But now I'm ready to dive in the deep end, and we've got some great plans ahead.
Cool. And so where can people find that?
Just go on YouTube and just search my first and last name, Barry, last name spelled Ehlert, and it'll pop right up.
Excellent. And on the other social channels, where can they find you?
So Instagram is last name first, so Ehlert, Barry. Twitter is my first and last name. LinkedIn, I have an account as well. Trying to think what other platforms I have. I think those are the main core ones.
Yeah. That'll allow people lots of opportunity to connect with you for sure and follow you and see what you're doing. So thank you, Barry. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know, like I said at the outset, this is a really busy time of year for people who are running golf courses. And so I just really appreciate the fact that you carved out some time for us today, shared some of your experiences, talked to us about Launchpad, which again, I just think is so exciting. It's going to really revolutionize things. And I cannot wait for it to get up here to Edmonton. But in the meantime, I'll be making a trip down to Calgary for sure to check it out once you guys have her up and going.
Lance, I really appreciate the time. The pleasure has been mine. Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, there you guys have it. Another episode is wrapped up. So if you want to check out any of our past episodes, head over to amplimedia.com/amplify. You'll see an archive there. And until next time, stay safe and good luck.